I would like to call today's meeting of the Board of County Commissioners to order. Ms. King, welcome to your first official meeting as Clark County Manager.
You know, that seems hard to believe. You've been here almost 30 years in your county career here, now the county manager. And the transition, obviously you were an assistant county manager, been on the 6th floor here, making big time decisions for a number of years. What has been the biggest transition for you personally to becoming the county manager?
For me, the biggest transition has been dealing with the county commissioners, the board. So now I have 7 individuals that I directly report to, and as you can imagine, when you have multiple people with, different, ideas and concerns for their communities, it could be somewhat, different as far as the transition for me. Before I was county manager, I was, in the finance world for 16, 17 years, and as you mentioned, assistant county manager, and so there was never really that one-on-one direct reporting, if you will, to 7 different individuals with 7 different needs. And so that's been the transition, the difference in the transition for me going from the county manager or the assistant county manager role in finance into the county manager role.
And that probably shows just how, not how easy the transition is, but how big county government is that it's been business as usual since you've replaced Don Burnett, and even in your tenure, a county commissioner has resigned and we've replaced him with Commissioner Jim Gibson.
Yes, that has absolutely been one of the changes that we've seen. As a matter of fact, over the next 2 to 4 years, we're going to see even more change with the board, just simply because we've got 5 of those individuals who will be termed out over the next 2 to 4 years. And so even going forward for me, that will, even be more of a significant change or a transition for me, just because I'll have, 5 additional individuals, that are going to be different than what we have today.
We just obviously wrapped up the legislature in Carson City 2017. I know you probably were happy not to have to go to Carson City as being a veteran of many legislative sessions in the past, but how did Clark County fare during the 2017 session? Did we get what we needed?
Yes, absolutely. I think Clark County, we actually had a couple of bills that were introduced by Clark County in the legislature. One of them was able to be passed by the legislature, which will not only help Clark County on the financing side, but as well as UMC. There was some dollars that can be allocated to the board for UMC for capital purposes, and so it's really a reallocation of what we currently have the ability with regard to property taxes, and so this gives us more of a flexibility to be able to use those property taxes for the University Medical Center, specifically for their capital needs. UMC has, probably over $200 million, and probably even higher than that, in capital costs. And currently, right now, they do not have like a dedicated source to be able to fund those needs, especially for a hospital that's been around for, I think, well over 30 years. And so you can imagine that there are some facilities, renovations or replacements that have to occur, in addition to medical equipment that has to be replaced. And where their capital needs are. So that was a big win, I think, for Clark County with regard to being able to provide some dollars for UMC. In addition to that, I think that overall our team and the county as well had a great working relationship with the leadership at the legislature. And so obviously if we had concerns about bills that we felt that were going to be a significant impact to Clark County, we were able to basically call those individuals, talk to those individuals, and help them understand our concern. And so for that, I think that we did fare very well, just because we had those relationships and the networking, with those individuals, where we could address if we had some issues with what they were trying to do.
And now, gosh, we're only another 18 months from the next legislative session. Are we already looking forward to that?
Well, I'm not. You never can look forward to legislative sessions, just because the dynamics of the session change from year to year. Just like with our Board of County Commissioners, you have your assembly folks that change or may change every 2 years, and they're up for election every 2 years, and so you never really know what you get from session to session. The Senate side is a little bit more, not really predictable, but it's more stable than what the assembly side is, because they have 4-year terms, whereas the assembly only have 2 years. And so you can have that turnover with, assembly folks more so on the assembly side than you would on the Senate side. So not looking forward to it, but it is what it is, and that's the nature of what we do, in local government.
An effort has always been made to make customer service a top priority for anyone that comes into this building or uses any type of county services. You, all the way down to every employee, that is a goal, right? That we want to make it easy for customers to do whatever business they have to do with the county, make it simple, right?
Absolutely, and that is one of the top priorities for me. Stepping into the county manager's role, for me, in local government, customer service is quite different than it is in the private sector. Private sector individuals, they have an opportunity to choose who they do business with. When you look at local government, specifically for Clark County, you may have departments that provide services where that individual or family or whomever we're dealing with, they may not have a choice but to deal directly with the county. And so in that regard, we have to look at customer service, I think, a little bit differently than we do the private sector. One thing being is I would, anyone who has to come to us voluntarily or involuntarily to do business with the county, I just want to make sure that our workforce is providing those services as efficiently as they can, and also providing the courtesy and the respect to those individuals that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Something recently, the $150 million of general obligation bonds are going to be going for the construction of parks. That happened at a recent board meeting. Can you just bring us through the financial gymnastics of how that happened and what's that going to mean to each individual commission district and to ultimately the citizens?
I think I'll start backwards and just talk about ultimately to the citizens. And so you have park and recreation facilities, and that can mean recreation facilities, that can mean swimming pools or aquatic centers. It could mean special use events or facilities like, say, Horseman's Park, or it can just mean open space, green space, where it's your traditional, park that has grass and picnic shade shelters or parkettes for children to play on. So what that means is, for our citizens, we will hope to have, about $150 million for which we can basically invest and build and renovate any existing parks that the county has in its inventory, and be able to dedicate dollars specifically just for park type facilities. So what that means, obviously our constituents, what we'd like to do is take a look at where we have aging facilities and where we need to renovate those facilities, because right now obviously those those parks are being utilized by our citizens, and if you haven't done any type of ongoing maintenance or renovations over a number of years, those areas can deteriorate. And so that's one of the things we want to take a look at, is just looking at our existing facilities to see where we do need renovations. In addition to that, we'd also like to figure out where in our community that there are service gaps. So we've grown a great deal over the last 10-15 years. We went through a recession where the county was not able to allocate dollars to be able to keep up with the growth and the demand for park services in our area. So we'll take a look at where those gaps exist with regard to park services, and determine at that point what the priority would be and where we probably would need to build new park and recreation type facilities.
You talked about 10 or 15 years ago, and that was probably some of the biggest challenge period of the mid-2000s of Clark County. Property and consolidated tax was down $107 million from peak year, and sales tax was down $71 million from peak year. We lost almost 20% of the workforce. What did we learn from that era, Yolanda?
I think the most important thing that we're learning today from that era is, as we move forward and as we look at, how do we meet the demands of the community, part of what we're trying to understand with our workforce is as opposed to just adding positions because there, maybe dollars available to add positions or new programming or expand programming, the thought is to really look at how we grow smarter and look at the services that are needed by our community and look where we've lacked in providing those essential services and, essentially be able to increase, or add to our workforce to be able to accommodate those needs that have been out there for many years, which we've not been able to address, because of the recession. In the county's budget, probably over the last, I believe this might be the third year where we have been able to add positions or expand programs in the county, but the dollar amount that's available to us is about $4 million. And when you look at a general fund budget of about $1.3 billion, $4 million adds, approximately 40 to 50 positions. And so that's not a lot when you look at our workforce. Is it intended to replace what we've lost? It is not, and I don't think we'll ever get to that point where we're going to replace what we lost with regard to resources. But I think we have to be smart and think about how we want to grow our workforce, especially so that it meets the needs of our communities and where we've been lacking over a number of years.
And finally, what are your biggest challenges, priorities, goals for 2017 and beyond?
For 2017, it's quite honestly, we've pretty much talked about, what we're looking at, what I would like to look at going forward. In local government, it really does take time to work through even some of the things that we've talked about today. And so if it's beyond 2017, I really don't see, the priorities changing very much, because I think it'll take a little bit of time, to work through and understand what the issues and what has to be addressed going forward. And as you mentioned, before 18 months, you have a legislative session starting up. And so it really is, priorities change. The priorities with the board will definitely change as we, continue to, get new members in as a result of the current members being termed out. So, I would just, have to say that those priorities do change, but I think, it's going to take me some time to pretty much get through what we have today and what's on my plate today to understand what needs to be done.
Well, business as usual, and we'll
Yes.
let you get back to doing that.
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.